The Northern Busway, Council put no pressure on the government to complete the motorway to Warkworth or even State Highway 1 to Wellsford, which is now a main city link road that's been under construction for 10 years. Big city drainage upgrades that will clean up the harbour need to be pushed along, as do lots of smaller unfinished projects all over the city. A sense of urgency is missing on our projects. Council lost control by sitting back behind CCOs and Wellington bureaucrats who've never built anything, along with Waka Kotahi who've never built anything on time or on budget. All current projects need to be finished with no more cost and time losses before we even think about starting new ones. And we should decide what's wanted, not Wellington, whose only role should be to send us the money. Number 2, stop wasting money. Council's top heavy with overpaid managers who waste money everywhere, too many meetings, not enough work and nobody taking responsibility. A kilometre of K Road cycleway cost enough to do 40 kilometres. $60 million was wasted at Northcote Point on a cycleway to meet a cycle bridge that isn't coming, and so on. New council mantra will be, does this make ratepayers better off before they even think of spending money? Number 3, take back control of council organisations. It's ridiculous that mainstream council services like roads, transport, water and sewer are not part of what council debate, but are all in the hands of unelected boards of poor quality. Gough has wrung his hands and used it as an excuse for poor performance. We own them, so the boards will be replaced by competent people given clear instructions of required performance. AT is a bureaucratic monster, ignoring advice from the industry they service and stubbornly refusing to entertain any new thinking or new infrastructure solutions. Ratepayers hand over $300 million yearly to AT, and you wonder what council does discuss when it's not council who decides who's going to drive through Newmarket or even down Queen Street. Watercare is a simple engineering business, delivering water and sewerage treatment. As a monopoly, it has no need for a marketing division, just a board who know the sector. Having all 40 of Northland's water systems foisted on it by Three Waters won't help. Ports of Auckland is a disgrace, occupying $6 billion of New Zealand's most valuable land, yet paying no rates or dividends. A new board will be instructed to pay $400 million a year to council, a paltry 6.5% return that most landlords easily achieve, and it'll remove a $500 subsidy that ratepayers unknowingly pay to have the harbour blocking them from the harbour, so the port blocking them from the harbour. They're our biggest waster of money, having blown $400 million on a failed automation project, plus expensive cranes that mostly sit idle. The workplace safety record is appalling, and the foolishly commissioned car park building is the worst spend ever. At a minimum, the cars need to be shifted to Northport, as they should have done years ago. Nuco and Auckland Unlimited are nonsense organisations that cost ratepayers $90 million a year, and will simply shut them down, and whatever value can be recovered will be handed back to council. The government COVID recovery hand would have been much more effective had it gone straight to local businesses, not Auckland Unlimited. Number 4, get the traffic moving. We can't rely on a pandemic to manage congestion. We need to finish all the projects underway and see what results. Then we should decide what, if any, new projects occur, not Wellington. We need to make better use of available technology to manage and improve traffic flows, integrate our roads with the motorways, plus use real-time data to match bus lanes with demand. Massive pressure needs to go onto CRL to get it done and see if it measures up to expectations. It won't, before even thinking about light rail. Cycleways need to be greatly simplified and cheapened. Plus, they shouldn't disrupt the city while being put in place. There won't be banning cars from the CBD. Lastly, there's no place for container trucks in the CBD, motorways or harbour bridge. The port need to show a 100% rail solution if they want to continue its operation where it is. Only when these are in place and properly assessed will we talk about another harbour crossing, and that debate will be led by North Shore, not Wellington. Nor will we even think about light rail, especially as the government has foisted house intensification everywhere, not just down Dominion Road. Number 5, open up the harbour access for people to enjoy. Waimea Harbour defines our city. Walk down Queen Street, turn left, and it's lively and prospering. Turn right, it's an ugly car park, then an industrial mess. Portland value will drive change, thereby opening up the harbour and livening downtown to match the excellent developments at Commercial Bay and Britomart. Those are my Auckland-wide policies. With regard to the BID areas you represent, I'm not a retailer, but I do own buildings in retail, hospitality, grocery, fast food, etc., and I'm on the board of Overwho. I just live just off K Road, so I'm aware of the pressures. My wife's doing her best to keep you all afloat, and we like your restaurants. Crime's an issue, and I can tell you that Otahu, of all places, is enjoying record sales, reduced crime, few if any empty shops, no rough sleepers or beggars. We spend our cash on CCTVs and security. We're starting Otahu Prezi cards, which can only be redeemed in Otahu, and we're unifying the veranda fascias to spruce up the main street. Auckland City is a massive, complex business that deserves a leader with experience in big, complex, troubled organisations. Anything less will result in the same senior council managers running the ship and snowballing in newcomers who won't know what's hit them. Super City legislation gave the Mayor increased powers which haven't been used. Goss budget's been wasted on PR rather than research. I've had plenty of resource in building consent, so I'm well informed and with control of the agenda have plenty of power to lead the council. I understand big balance sheets better than most of them, but the current council's failure to reduce costs during the lockdowns, the financial situation is horrible and will require previous experience of big budget challenges to avoid major disruption or the need for unexpected rate rises. Indeed, the worse it is, the more my experience will be needed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Wayne. So as Cheryl mentioned at the outset, we have a media panel. We've got Simon Wilson from the New Zealand Herald, Todd Niall from Stuff, and Patrick Smelly from the Business Desk. We have apologies from John Edens from RNZ who couldn't attend this morning. So first off, Simon, we'll hand over to you. You've got sort of 3 minutes to chomp away, ask Wayne some questions and get a couple of supplementaries in if you can as well.
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated. Morning, Wayne.
Wayne,
I wonder if I could just start by asking you to clarify something. There has been controversy in your past in relation to a supermarket you own in the far north, where you, as I understand it, you haven't paid rates on that. Could you clarify if that's the case?
No, there's no controversy. Entirely over the water, and I pay the council connection charges for sewage, but there is no rates, there is no land. When the court read the Foreshore and Seabed Act, along with other things not over the water, I don't.
So fundamentally, you're not paying rates on a property you own on a legal technicality. Do you think that's a good basis on which to go to Auckland ratepayers and say you want to be their mayor?
I pay a lot of rates in Auckland and a lot of rates elsewhere in Northland. I understand the Rating Act. I've actually read it, and I don't have a title for that piece of land. I have an occupation license, and I pay exactly the same as other people with occupation licenses. It's a matter of showing that you understand and read the legislation.
The reason I'm asking, Wayne, is that I imagine a lot of Aucklanders would like to think that their mayor pretty aggressively went after people who were evading paying rates and would not be keen on having a mayor who supported them by doing it himself.
Mate, I pay all the rates which I'm legally required to pay, and I think it's important that people do that. I'm also, because I pay a lot of rates, I'm also absolutely careful that we don't be charging rates just to fix mistakes from the past. The legal requirement is that you paid rates on land. I have no land there. You understand that? It's a land.
All right, moving along. You said it several times, you said it again this morning, that you don't think any new projects should be started until the existing ones are completed. That sounds to me like a recipe for no progress for several years. We've got projects like the Central Interceptor, for example, which are going to take years to complete.
I think the Central Interceptor needs to be finished. It's a very important project. It's the one on which our harbour quality remains. The City Rail Link is years behind. It should be finished sooner, but it won't be. But we've had a big change since they put that in place. People are not necessarily going to the city as much as they were. We should open it and see, does it do what is promised? In terms of busways, I want to see them finished. We should finish things and see what impact they have. What the example at Northcote, where they built a cycleway to prepare for a cycle bridge, which is not coming, is the sort of waste that shouldn't happen. You finish projects, you assess them, and you start again.
What I'm really asking, though, is a policy where you're suggesting no new projects are started. You said this several times, no new projects are started until the existing ones are finished. Isn't that a policy that will stop future development? Don't we have to have a rolling program of projects finishing?
We've got years
every
of
year?
we've got years of rolling projects laid out now that haven't been done. There's miles of cycleways that are planned, and we're not getting them done because we're doing them expensively and slowly. That isn't a recipe for stopping work. It's a recipe for getting it done.
Awesome.
I suppose the big question around your policy platform is in relation to decisions that are made in Wellington, decisions about the role of rail, decisions about harbour crossings, all sorts of things like that. What do you think you bring to the role that will enable you to be more effective at dealing with government agencies and government itself than previous mayors?
Well, firstly, I understand infrastructure and roading pretty well. And we tend to have things foisted on Auckland for electoral reasons, for general electoral reasons, rather than for actually a reason that's related to a careful analysis of what's required and the costs associated with it. Also, they're interfering with what council has the right to do. The recent edict from government to allow three-story houses to be built on every piece of land kind of makes a mockery of years of town planning and careful analysis by the council of what they do want to do. So is that sensible? Then the decisions about the harbour crossing, which is a perennial promise from various unelected Wellington groups, needs to be made in the face of the real information, is that the Northern Busway is doing a damn good job and no more cars are going over it than were years ago. And if you want to increase the capacity of that, get the container trucks off the bridge. Now, those things are things I understand, and I'm not saying that I've got every cabinet minister on my phone. I'm not at all, but I've worked with them in very big things in Auckland, and they know and will respect it. They will come and want to ring. They will want to know what an experienced infrastructure engineer is saying about infrastructure before they make rash promises.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks, Simon. I have to move on to the next one now. Is Todd Nile from Stuff. Just make sure you're on unmuted there.
Yep. Can you hear me okay? So two areas. Wayne, from your media release yesterday, it sounds like you don't favour reallocating road space to cycling.
No,
do you?
I'm a cyclist. I just want them sped up, made simpler and faster. I watched K Road ones right out the window where I live. They dug up the corner where I live 6 times to put a cycleway on. I think cycleways are great, but all they need is a painted surface and a curb. That's all that protects pedestrians. We've made them too complex, too slow, and it's the $2 billion I don't like.
Do you accept that Auckland needs to reduce transport emissions by 64% by 2030? And how would you get there? Right.
Continuing the cycleways and rolling them out, but making them cheaper and faster is good. But basically, shifting truck freight onto trains is the best hit you get. It's the simplest hit, and you get not only a major reduction in greenhouse gases, you get a major reduction in congestion and a major reduction in the need for overly complex civil solutions to expand motorway access for trucks. So what do trucks contribute? So if you got all the trucks off the road, what difference does that make? If you put 150 containers, and already they'd have container trains coming from the port now, but they only do 1 a day. All of the freight should come up. 150 containers fit on a train and use the same diesel as 27 trucks. But do you know whether that makes much of a difference to emissions? I mean, it's all got to be quantified. Yeah, that's 150 containers would be using 150 trucks. On a train, they use the amount of diesel of 27 trucks. That's a reduction of 123 truck equivalents just by shifting freight to rail. That's the main movement in Europe of saving greenhouse gases, is freight to rail. I'm a great believer in cycle. Along with Simon, I cycle, although he's a bit better uphill than I am. Actually, this webinar is a damn good reducer of greenhouse gases. And I think the lessons that have been learned from the lockdown, where people work at home, is another reduction. And we should be encouraging that. At the one hand, we're encouraging people to come back and fill the shops, which is important. And I totally support that, but we're filling more office buildings when in fact they could be trading at home.
You refer repeatedly to the explosion in staff numbers and salaries since amalgamation in 2010. Can you give us the numbers behind that claim?
Well, there's another whole layer goes over the top. It's not just the acceleration in numbers, but under the old cities, which did need, I didn't oppose having some form of change, but I don't think they got it right. But the senior staff used to live in the areas they administer. Now there's a whole layer of very high paid people who probably live in Remuera, for all I know, that are above the people in the people. So that I get lots of complaints from the people in South Auckland and out west that the people that they used to be able to ring up don't live there anymore.
Yeah, no, but I want you to quantify that claim that there's been an explosion in staff numbers and an explosion in salaries. Well,
we're now going to hit $1 billion for staff salaries. The amount of savings that were claimed by the last one was a very small percentage of what the cost is. And I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me because I'm out of speech, but if I can quite happily quote that back to you if you need.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep, no, that's me done. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. And then finally, to Patrick from Business Desk.
Morning, Wayne.
Morning, Patrick.
One of the things which, as a Wellingtonian, I read a lot about in Auckland is the suggestion that the Auckland CBD has become crime-ridden, unsafe, empty during the period of COVID. And there seems to be now a question as to whether the central business district, as previously understood in most cities, actually has a future that's like the future that it seemed to have prior to the pandemic. What do you think the future of the Auckland CBD looks like? Is it the same as before, or do you have to take a different approach? And what, if you do have to take a different approach, what does your policy approach look like for the CBD?
Right, well, some parts of the CBD are lovely. I mean, the Britomart and Commercial Bay are great developments, and that area of the CBD is trotting along nicely, and I want to encourage that by getting the cars off the wharf and having more people living down there in Portland and having more of a CBD down there. As far as Queen Street itself goes, you have to admire Smith & Co. They've managed to trade on brilliantly and surrounded by devastation. And so that they've worked something out. I think, and in terms of the crime thing, I don't know whether the the activity in the heart of the city, which is the equivalent of the Newmarket Business Association, has spent their money wisely. They're saying that they're going to that the government should put in CCTVs and whatnot. Well, a lot of the other business associations want to know who we've done that. We have security, we have CCTVs, and it has reduced crime. The move to work from home is going to reduce the number of people working in offices in the city, and there will be more opportunities for more people to live in. There'll be more conversions of office buildings to apartments, and I live in an office building in the CBD, and it's nice to do that. And I think that we'll have more people doing that, and that's actually better for the overall city. One of the things I really dislike about what's happening in Auckland at the moment is the invasion of Pukekohe's elite soils by subdivisions. And there's also various statements. Everyone says the city's growing, excepting in the recent 3 measures, the Auckland population is actually dropping. People are moving to other parts of New Zealand. There's more job demand in Northland than there is in Auckland at the moment. So it will require a rethink, and a lot of that rethinking will come from the investors. I mean, people who are owning large office buildings that are starting to empty out will be busy thinking about what they're going to do with those.
Thanks. We've seen in the last week or so the government release its discussion document on managed retreat in the face of flooding and sea level rise. What do you think the appropriate balance is there, and how serious a challenge do you think that is for Auckland in the next, say, 20 to 30 years?
Well, Holland is mostly below sea level now and has a thriving economy. Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam is 4.5 meters below sea level. So there's plenty of technologies you can utilise to manage a change in sea level. The very house that Simon was accusing me of finagling up north is over the sea, and the sea level will rise, and I'll probably have to lift it or do something about it. I don't expect the government to pay for that. I think Auckland's not badly placed. With the harbour is, our geology is not sinking. In fact, in terms of what risk management is in New Zealand, we tend to follow around rather bizarrely. Christchurch had an earthquake, having had the people forgetting that they'd had a lot of earthquakes about 80 years before, but they just forgot and did nothing about it. And so suddenly we have to have earthquake design all over New Zealand. Auckland has had a history of volcanoes, but we don't seem to think about what might happen there. And yet we've got 40 of those. The oldest is 40,000 years old, and the newest is 1,000 years old. So there's a bit of a trend there. No one's ever talked about that. So risk management has to be carefully thought through.
Did I hear you correctly in saying that you would basically disband Auckland Unlimited?
Well, I can't see the value in it at the moment. They just hand out $70 million just recently that was handed over the COVID thing. It would have been better if it had gone straight to the Newmarket business and centre of CBD and other things. It looks like a glorified real estate travel agency to me.
So there's some savings there. You say you'll take 400 million from the port. Presumably that's by way of dividend and constrain their capital expenditure program or something.
No, just tell them that if you demand someone to make use of land, they will change the use of the land to get a return from it. It's because no one's asked for any money back. So that definitely is an increase in income. You can have increases if you want to improve your balance sheet, you increase your income and you reduce your costs. And they should have cut the costs a lot more once we had a lockdown. To have a lockdown with buses roaring up and down the streets, bone empty, is nuts. If you look at what's happening in Shanghai, there's nobody in the streets, and nor are there any buses either.
I guess where I'm sort of getting to though is that so there's some savings, there's some revenue you could probably drag out of the port. Clearly, if you're a highly paid senior to middle manager at Auckland Council, you should be brushing off your CV if you win the election. But do you think it's possible to run Auckland with its allegedly horrible financial situation without inevitably hitting ratepayers pretty hard with some sort of rate increases over the next little while? I mean, they're already.
I understand the debates that right now the management are suggesting that the only way out is a massive increase in rates. That's what they're saying. And I don't think that the ratepayers should be paying for that management not reducing costs drastically during the lockdown. And when I was chairing Auckland Hospital Board, we managed to get rid of $100 million operating loss with no reduction in services. There is waste everywhere if you start looking for it. We didn't reduce any services to get rid of $100 million loss. And we did just by being careful, by introducing thought process. The number of meetings that the council attend is mainly there to sort of keep them busy and feeling that's what they should be doing. But a lot of us, I've attended some of their workshops, and I mean, other than the sausage rolls, there was nothing to be gained from the whole day.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Patrick. Now moving on to some questions that have come through. Now, just for transparency, some of those questions with the media panel went on longer than 3 or 4 minutes because they were tied. That's okay. They were tied to themes that actually came through in the questions anyway. One thing just to pick up on, Wayne, which has come through from questions from the members across the central bids, is obviously for us, crime is a huge deal right now and has been growing over the last couple of years. And you mentioned that, you know, in Otahu, they put in CCTV. Most of us have also put in CCTV. We've had it for about 15 years in Newmarket. But despite our best efforts, that, you know, crime has got worse. We're having massive issues with emergency housing with 500 odd people who are housed just off Broadway as an example. The same situation's happening in Parnell, Ponsonby, Karangahape Road, Uptown and the CBD and other areas of Auckland. What more could council do to help in this area?
Well, actually, under the legislation which created the greater city, the mayor has a lot more powers than have been used. They do have the ability to call together government leaders. We've had the council have felt that the way that they contact Wellington is to fly there, whereas in fact there are 40 MPs in Auckland. They need to be gathered in quite regularly into the mayor's office and be told what they need, what are our worries, what are they going to do about it. There is an election, a quite close election in terms of who will win a year after the mayoral elections. And as mayor, I'd be encouraging a bidding war over police in responses to crime. I know that some of the 17-year-olds that are involved in crime are bigger than I am, and I'm a big guy. And you think they know full well they're going to go to the children's court. Where are the parents? Where's mummy and daddy for these kids? We need to encourage a competitive debate between the two major parties, because in fact, councils don't actually write rules about that. Councils, I know that some people have been saying they would have opened the borders early. Councils don't open the borders, nor do they write health policy, but the mayor has a particular ability to bring ministers and make them come to Auckland.
Okay, thanks for that. So also we've discussed a wee bit this morning about the BID, Business Improvement District Program, of which, you know, Newmarket, Parnell, Karangahape Road, Uptown, Ponsonby, Heart of the City are all part of, along with 50 others across the CBD. Also, it's been a lot of commentary I've noticed in the mayoral campaigns to date regarding bids and the targeted rates. So you'll be aware that we're funded by rates on commercial property, democratically approved by a ballot, governed by a board under a constitution. What are your thoughts on the ongoing survival of the bid program in Auckland?
I'm a great fan of the bid program. I'm quite happy to pay those extra rates so that I can be on it. And having paid them for quite a while, I decided to get off my butt and actually get onto the board of some of the ones where I pay. I'm on 2 boards actually, and I think that they are a very good system, and it almost needs to be better advertised, because I think some people who pay the bid rate don't actually realise that they are. But they're a valuable tool, and I think that would have been a much better route for disseminating the council, or rather the government COVID funds, than the way they did it via Auckland Unlimited.
And straight to the bids in comparison.
Well, absolutely. They pay it and they should get it.
Okay. Next question is, despite COVID and the ongoing lockdowns that we've had in Auckland over the last couple of years, Auckland is highly likely to continue on its growth trajectory. And how could council better support that growth? Is it going to be going up, or is it going to be going out as a city?
Well, I'm not absolutely sure that the growth is quite, people with planners give predictions, but predictions are very hard, especially about the future. And I've found that if you want to ask what's happening, look at what the retailers are doing, or the big retailers are doing. So, I mean, some planners are saying that, you know, the growth's out of Auckland, but look out of south of Auckland, but it's clearly out northwest. And that's where the big retailers and others are going. I would like to see getting more people living into the centre of the city, because those people don't require great additional infrastructure. All of the foreshore where the port is should be like Western Viaduct, nice apartment buildings and parks and access for the public. And a lot of those office buildings will be starting to convert over the next few years. So there'll be more people living in the city. So that is growth that comes without a demand for infrastructure. And then in terms of the infrastructure, I mean, I do subdivisions, and it's very hard to be allowed to do something innovative on a subdivision. The rules are so carefully written out by council staff that it's bloody hard to have a good idea. And we've never had anybody in there who's done one before. But I can just tell you how hard it is to do things. For instance, subdividers are all required to roll out fibre, which means you've got to deal with chorus, which is one of the worst and not monopolies in the country to deal with. Whereas these days, it's far cheaper to give everybody a satellite and say tune into Starlink.
Great, thanks for that, Wayne. You also mentioned earlier in the presentation that you want to complete all the infrastructure projects before we start anything else. But with that theme in mind and thinking about Auckland going into the future, what infrastructure projects do you think, and I mean major ones, not sort of on a large scale, what projects do you think would need to be championed in Wellington to help improve Auckland?
Well, I think that the big drainage interceptors, which are underway, are very important, and we need to really put some effort into those. I'm sure they're doing their best, but things seem to take a bloody long time here, and they always seem to take longer than they should. We've got the City Rail link. I think they've made bad choices about how to do it. I certainly wouldn't have encouraged cut and cover of Albert Street. We've got to see what is it actually going to do. The particular, if I was going to nominate a new project which isn't on the books quite, it certainly wouldn't be the light rail. It would be a heavy rail between Avondale and Southdown. The land is already owned by Kiwi Rail, and the worst congestion in Auckland is actually around Southdown. I mean, the truck congestion around Wirrie Southdown area is horrific. And if we had two entries into where you went and got your stuff from, one being out west and a heavy rail linking the two, you'd immediately reduce truck congestion straight away. And the land's already there. And that strikes me as a really, really good project.
Awesome. So you mentioned previously that you want to take back control of some of the CCO model, which Auckland currently operates under, and many other councils around the country, like Auckland Transport, Watercare, Panuku, etc., and Auckland Unlimited. Auckland Transport is often in the media a lot these days for lots of reasons, and they have an unenviable task in many ways in what they have to try and achieve for the city. And most recently, they've come under a lot of fire for cycleways, which we've discussed briefly this morning, but also most recently, their 10-year parking strategy for Auckland. What are your views on the parking strategy that's gone out for consultation?
Well, just go back a little bit to the first about why I want to take control. Most people, although they know that AT exists, most people think that's what the council and the mayor debate and sort out. But in fact, people inside AT decide these things and they're presented to the council to approve or vary. Whereas in fact, the council should be where the thought processes start, and not the council staff either. The council itself should be encouraging to initiate some of these discussions, and you'll get feedbacks across. We have a city which has some very, very different characteristics. I mean, there's no way that Wellsford is anything like Dominion Road, and so we need to be looking specifically what's going where. In terms of busways, I think the busways are very valuable and more valuable than a light rail would be. But we need to modernise them. There are certain periods in the day when there is no need for it to be separated off. But we just have fixed signs on the side of the road. With modern technology, you could actually flash up every day what times this is going to be open. If it's a wet day, the busway will be open for longer than a dry day. During school holidays, congestion seems to disappear. We don't change any rules for that. Because AT is sort of a monstrous organisation, only AT buses operate down those things. Why not open them up to sort of an Uber 10-seater operation that could utilise those as well? In terms of going to the airport, I usually catch the bus to the airport because you go down the Dominion Road busway and it's quicker than ever seeing an Uber actually. So I can't see why we have a light rail to get to the airport. We can get out there for 25 minutes on a bus for $17, and they go every 10 minutes. I don't have answered the question. There was a whole bunch of questions, but
Just around the parking side of things as well. So we'll
oh
continue.
yeah, well, the parking things. I think that there are times during the day when you can park and times when you can't, and we should liven that up by electronic messaging, and so that. And a good example of that, and one which I had something to do with, was Grafton Bridge partially is open for cars and partially is not. And that's particularly, I initiated it because when I was chairing the hospital board, I discovered that people were dying on Grafton Bridge with heart attacks because the ambulance couldn't get quick through. So I interrupted a Mayoral meeting and told them, you guys look like candidates. Can we do something different? And when you go there is actually a light at the top of the Grafton Bridge that instructs and centrally they can turn that off and change it according to things. That's the sort of way we should be delivering the messages about when you can use a busway and not.
Awesome. I think I've covered off most of the themes that have come through from our members. Cheryl, is there anything else that you had on there?
Yes, I think the one thing, Wayne, I'd be keen to hear, especially understanding your view towards Auckland Unlimited, is what would your vision be for promoting Auckland, especially for international travellers and visitation from other parts of New Zealand? Because that's always important to us and our members.
Well, the industry that you've lost most of all is the offshore education industry. And so that needs to be worked back. But I don't know whether Auckland Unlimited helped a hell of a lot with that. In terms, I'd still keep a small real events team back in the council. As soon as you form a separate one, like Auckland Unlimited, the whole corporate explosion takes place. Layers of employees, layers of managers. I've actually dealt with them when I brought a major event to here about 5 years ago. And we did get a little bit of money out of them, but they spent far more of that on their own wages, buggering around, giving us the money in the first place. So the idea of council supporting those things is a good idea, but I don't think it needs a whole organisation to do that. And it's not as if they handled the America's Cup particularly well. Had somebody in there managed to insert 8 words into their contract, we still have it here. And those 8 words were, if you win, you will defend it here. But they didn't do that. So we spent all the money and the thing's gone. So there's kind of like a lack of real business acumen across council.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, Cheryl. So Wayne, just back to you now, just the last couple of minutes, just to sum up, give us that rousing, inspirational speech to sort of convince us you're the man for the job.
Oh, well, I think, first of all, congratulations for doing this. It's a good way to encourage people, and a lot of our business people don't really understand how important council is to them in some ways. I am not a particularly keen person in the political parties being strongly represented in council. I think that councils work better without the Labor national divide and teams forming. I've run councils in the past where you try and keep the debates about each individual issue that you're discussing. So if someone doesn't like what you're doing on libraries, it doesn't mean they're going to vote against you when you get to roads or footpaths. We need to make better use of footpaths as well, and it's unclear for cyclists where you can and can't cycle when you do come to the end of the cycleway. And in my view, you should be able to cycle along a footpath. But then again, I don't cycle flat out in Lycra like some people do. So just simple, sensible debates. Sensible debates is really what I would like to have. Also, and lastly, I'm not a mayor that will attend every function. That's not what I am. I'm a mayor that will be sorting out the big issues.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Wayne. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you also to Simon from the Herald, Todd from Staff, and Patrick from Business Desk. Also to my colleague Cheryl and my colleagues Viv from Ponsonby, Brent from Uptown, and Jamie from Karangahape Road. As I said earlier at the beginning, we have got another one of these next Thursday featuring Leo Malloy, and then followed by Viv Beck the following week and Professor Collins the week after that. Thanks for joining us, everyone, this morning. Take care and stay safe, and try and avoid COVID if you can.